some really good news yesterday. And by the way, this is a type of news that is kind of being pushed under the rug with all the other big news items that are coming out publicly. But this is a big deal. Yesterday, our nation's highest court agreed to hear a case that could decide whether pro-life states like South Carolina can direct Medicaid funds away from abortion providers like Planned Parenthood. Those funds are intended to help low-income individuals obtain necessary medical assistance, but should they be used to fund Planned Parenthood? We're here now to share why South Carolina's Department of Health and Human Services sued Planned Parenthood is John Bursch. He is Senior Counsel and Vice President of Appellate Advocacy at Alliance Defending Freedom. John, welcome back to Washington Watch. We appreciate you coming on.
Always happy to be here. Thank you.
Okay, so break this down for us, boil it down. What is at the heart of this case?
Well, you have to go back almost 7 years ago, and South Carolina defunded Planned Parenthood as part of its Medicaid program. Every state takes Medicaid dollars from the federal government and then distributes those to hospitals and doctors and medical facilities all around the state to provide health care for low-income people. And Planned Parenthood demanded a portion of that. Well, states can defund a medical provider from their state program for a variety of reasons, whether that be endangering patients or not following health and safety standards, for committing fraud, abuse, and any number of other things. And for several of those reasons, South Carolina defunded Planned Parenthood. Planned Parenthood had the right to file an administrative appeal with the state, but it missed the deadline on that. And so it conspired with one of its patients, its clients, to file a federal court lawsuit and got a federal judge to order the state to reinstate Planned Parenthood. And that went up to a court of appeals, which affirmed that. And now the Supreme Court has decided to review the decision, and it will decide whether states have the ability to defund Planned Parenthood as part of their Medicaid program.
Well, that's huge. So what would be the implications if the Supreme Court stands with South Carolina?
It's tremendously huge because Planned Parenthood takes taxpayer dollars in states all across the country. And right now, the Federal Court of Appeals are divided over whether states can do that. And so if the Supreme Court would rule in South Carolina's favor, not only would that give South Carolina the ability to defund Planned Parenthood and use those tax dollars at more comprehensive care clinics to take care of women with a full panoply of services, it would allow many other states to do the same, which are currently prohibited by similar court rulings in their locales.
So what's the process from here as it moves to the Supreme Court? When would a decision be made? When would some oral argument? What's the process?
The oral arguments will likely be in April, and because the Supreme Court is usually pretty good about issuing decisions in all of the cases that it hears during a term, we would expect a decision by the end of June.
Wow, so this is going to move pretty quickly through the Supreme Court.
Yeah, this is very fast. The Supreme Court is usually not a fast player. The legal system is never fast. But if you have a petition granted in December or January, as this one was, then you can actually get through the whole U.S. Supreme Court process pretty quickly. And we feel pretty confident about the Supreme Court's decision here because it's got several precedents in the past interpreting the same provisions of the Medicaid statute that look pretty good for our case. And so our hope is that they'll vindicate the right of South Carolina and every state to choose where they send their federal funding dollars for Medicaid only to those clinics that protect and support life and women's health.
Is there a state rights issue versus a federal law type issue involved with this? Could that be a complication in all of it?
Well, I think that's something that actually helps South Carolina here because when Congress enacts a spending clause statute like Medicaid, they offer states money, and if they take it, then they have to follow certain conditions. Then Congress needs to set unambiguously in the statute what the states have to do. And there's nothing in the Medicaid statute that suggests that states can be sued by Planned Parenthood and their clients in federal court in order to have their funding reinstated. And if the Supreme Court says that Planned Parenthood can't do that, then the federal lawsuit goes away. Most likely their appeal is time barred, and the South Carolina defunding decision would stand.
Wow. Incredible. This is huge, and this is one of those news items I think just kind of lost in the fog of all the other news that is so much in front of the line right now. Any idea, we've only got about a minute or so left, any idea how many abortions are actually paid through Medicaid funds, be it in South Carolina or nationally?
Well, it's hard to tell because you can't get a good look at Planned Parenthood's books. And part of the problem with these funding situations is that they can take money for non-abortion purposes, say providing contraception or something like that other medical providers could do equally well or better. And then because they've got that money in their operating budget, they can use that to fund abortions. So what South Carolina and other states understand is that if you want to stop Planned Parenthood from committing abortions, you need to squeeze away all of their government funding. And that's what South Carolina intends to do here.
Fantastic. Thank you, John Bursch, Senior Counsel and Vice President of Appellate Advocacy at Alliance Defending Freedom, our great friends at ADF. Thank you so much for joining us and for bringing this tremendous news. Again, a prayer item that we want to be supporting in every way that we can. Merry Christmas to you, John. Thanks for joining us today.
Merry Christmas. And if folks want to follow the case, they can find out more about it at adflegal.org.
Fantastic. Thank you, sir.